meals all night. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about food waste, because that is also something that touches people every day, all day long, specifically at specific hours when they're, whether we're serving meals or if we're dealing with like a standing food situation of like snacks or other things that schools might have available all day long. So do you know how you all first quantified, or how did you first quantify food waste in the dining situation and dining operations? And what tools or methods have you all used to measure the food waste piece to know really not only how much was being wasted, but now how much is being saved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that history of when we had our other food service provider who cared less about food waste, I'm not sure if we did measure it during that time. And if so, we weren't using Compost Now, which is our beloved partner in our food waste initiative, Zero Food Waste Initiative, because they are a really good partner in helping us turn our food waste into compost. And without them at the moment, we wouldn't be able to do so. We have a really great food service provider, Bon Appetit, who, because it's a part of their values as a company to do food reduction and being just mindful of that, because of that, they also train their staff on how to compost. So that's something that they do. And without those partnerships, it will be very difficult to do composting and reducing our food waste. That partnership with Compost Now, I do believe that it started in around 2020, 2021. And because we have partners who care deeply about food waste and composting, they have tools to measure that. No, Bon Appetit, they have a tool to measure food waste. So we receive reports around food waste per month. And then for composting, it's the same thing with our Compost Now partners. They measure the amount of food waste that they receive from our institution, and then the amount of compost that they created from that food waste. So and they have their own methods and ways of doing that measurement or coming up with those calculations, but that's because of their leadership and caring about sustainability and climate action. We're able to make that happen as an institution.
Wonderful. Great. We've had Bon Appetit for some time now. So I remember when it changed over from the former food systems process. So you may or may not be privy to kind of this question, but wanting to know what operational changes in dining, whether that be menu planning, portion sizes, trayless dining. I think I remember when the trays were taken away. I think that was back in the day when that happened. Are you aware of which practices or what kind of changes in the system when you're dealing with serving that helped with the reduction of maybe water conservation too, if we're talking about trays and dishes, but also with food waste? Is there anything you want to talk about that you can speak to when it comes to what practices and operational changes happened that has kicked back the most in reduction of plate and kitchen waste?
Yes, so Spelman students have, for years, they've cared about food waste. And because of that, they have advocated for different initiatives to be put in within the institution. So I know like one of them was the trayless, the trayless. And I know Maya, who now works at Spelman in our events, she was a part of that change. And so over the years, like the progress has been made. A couple of years ago, Spelman students advocated for takeout trays so they can take their food to their dorms and not put it in. So reusable takeout trays. So that's another way that it's not necessarily reducing food waste, but is just being mindful about the way that we're operating within our cafeteria and reducing the amount of disposable plates that we use.
Right.
So that's, and that plays a role in the overall environmental sustainability thinking within our institution. And Spelman's students, I know that they have been asking a lot about our composting and food waste. They definitely want to see it more. And by see, I mean have it be communicated better, so that they are aware of what's going on. So we're launching that comms initiative this semester, and so that we should see some really interesting behavioral changes too because of that, and just seeing like what else do students want to see since we're doing composting, like what other ideas are out there around food waste reduction. And then because our campus food service provider, Bon Appetit, they do think in terms of waste reduction, I know that they try to be mindful of that as well when they're serving.
So you talked about, I was going to ask you about the student piece, like how is it being communicated to students, what the savings are. So it's great that you all are launching the initiative to be more forward facing about that. So who is handling the compost side of things, and how did it get started? Because obviously you have Bon Appetit, who is the food service provider, and then you have Compost Now, who is your partner in getting the compost where it needs to be. So how does that partnership work? I think our audience would be interested in that order of operations, if you will.
Right. And again, that's why I would say that sustainability it's a team sport, because without our campus partners, we would not be able to compost or reduce our food waste at the rate in which we are. Right. So what that looks like is our Spelman team, our facilities, our operations team we have put our money where our mouth is and have said, we care about food waste. We want to reduce our food waste. Let's get composting bins, right? We've also thought really hard about what that composting looks like at Spelman, because we visited some institutions where they have composting bins all throughout campus, but it doesn't necessarily, sometimes it doesn't work as efficiently if you do it that way, because then you have high contamination rates. So our team has thought really hard about how can we ensure that we are actually composting? How can we ensure that we have low contamination rates, that we are training particular people to make sure that they have a mindset around food waste reduction and composting. And so because our food service provider is Bon Appetit, and they care also about environmental sustainability and food waste, we gave them compost bins so they're able to compost in the back end of the cafeteria. So that's where our composting bins live. They live in the back, which is one of the reasons why people ask, why aren't we composting? It's not that we're not composting. It's handled on the invisible side of campus.
Got it.
And because of that, we have really low contamination rates. And pretty much everything we put into every bin that Compost Now picks up from Spelman will be able to be turned into compost because the contamination rate is so low. That's a process that was created by a really good team of people who knew a lot about logistics, but who also cared about composting. Because we're not at a time, unfortunately, we're not at a time within our state of Georgia where composting makes sense economically. So it's an investment in the future of what this could look like, right? And how
Right.
we're all in this together. We're on the same team. We're trying to build something that makes sense for the long term, because we can't just keep putting food in the landfill. One,
Right.
because landfills are filling up, and two, because at the end of the day, that is a resource. It's an actual resource that we're just throwing in the trash can. Food waste gets, as you all know, like food waste gets turned into compost. It can get turned into a nutrient that growers are able to use. And then it could also be turned into other things like energy.
Right. So there are compost now bins that Bon Appetit is using. So does compost now come and collect it? Is that compost utilized on campus, or do you know? I'm just curious about the specifics of where that compost is utilized and how that's been processed beyond Spelman's campus.
So the way that it works is that Spelman has compost now bins that sit in the back end of our cafeteria with our food service provider, Bon Appetit.
Right.
Compost now comes to pick those up,
Okay.
I think, once a week, and then they turn that food waste into compost.
Got it.
So that is an entire process that happens every single day. It's happening right now. Students are eating. The cafeteria staff are then we have a conveyor belt. When they put their food on the conveyor belt, the staff then take that food and dump it into the composting bin. And then from there, Compost Now comes and picks it up once a week. So that's what that process looks like. And it involves a lot of different people. There's a lot of moving parts. And at the moment, we've seen that it does benefit, because we created over 30,000 pounds of compost since 2021. So, and we are very grateful to be able to do that in partnership with Compost Now and Bon Appetit.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for kind of downloading us on both of those pieces, both the retrofit piece, built environment piece, and the food, because for campuses, those are two very, very important pieces to consider when you're thinking about sustainable practices. So now let's talk a little bit about kind of your job in a macro space. What you've been on the job, I think, a few years now. Like, what do you think is some of the best advice you have for the sustainability managers or coordinators at smaller institutions that are less resourced, trying to implement similar programs? So if they're just starting out, where should they start? How should they start? And how would you recommend that they prioritize this work?
Yeah, so I've been at Spelman for 2 years now, and I would say it's really important. So when I came into Spelman, and it's a little bit different for me because I graduated from Spelman as well.
Sure.
So I had an understanding of some of just the cultural aspects. And at the end of the day, the sustainability movement is a cultural movement. It's a culture change. And I also sort of didn't want to bring anything new to people, because people already have a lot on their plate. They're not trying to do new initiatives. It's just a lot. And the piece that I really wanted to make sure that happened was the question that I asked myself was, how can we make people feel that they have a place within sustainability on campus? So, because you can build a beautiful sustainability team, but if that team isn't integrated within the culture of the institution, it doesn't matter if you have one person or if you have 10 people. If they aren't integrated within the institution, then it's pointless. So just trying to figure out what people are working on within your institution and how you can tie sustainability to their already existing projects. So that was the mindset. That's still the mindset. Thankfully, Spelman has been open to some other smaller initiatives that I have put out there. And one being the Student Sustainability Fund, which is a small pool of money. And with that funding, students are able to pursue ideas related to at the intersection of sustainability and innovation. So that also shows people that sustainability isn't just environmental sustainability. It's not just how do we reduce waste, but it's also how do we use technology to do these things? What does the next innovation look like so that we can ensure that we are able to compost in a better way so that those processes are a lot more affordable to the everyday person and to institutions. Like, this is something that's innovation. So we have our students who, there's one student in particular student team, because it takes a team. So the student teams are working on different initiatives. One in particular was a food waste management app. And then another one was an energy project. So we have students who care deeply about sustainability, and now they're building some technology around it to solve some of those issues. But luckily, like, just trying to get buy-in, but buy-in just comes with not only deep trust, because it does take trust, but also just knowing that people already have projects. And so it's deep trust, but also deep curiosity to know what people are working on and how you can be involved in their already existing projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you all, for our audience, when Iesha talks about a whole campus integration, that is not hyperbole, and that is not an exaggeration, or cannot be minimized. When I worked in campus sustainability for 6 or 7 years, I saw the effects of schools that had one professor that was interested in sustainability. Schools in Georgia, I won't name names, but schools in Georgia who had like one professor that was interested in sustainability and thought that the campus should switch over to that. And the uphill climb that it took to get those campuses to be interested in this and to see it as a priority and to get anything done there, because they spent most of their time trying to convince the office of the president, the faculty, and facilities, spent all their time trying to convince them that this was important. And so nothing or not as much was getting done because of this one professor that was interested in it. And also, I think to your point, Iesha, about where it could fall, like facilities, it kind of falls under facilities, if I'm not mistaken, at Spelman. But in some other schools, the sustainability office falls under student services. At some other schools, so you get different priorities based on where the sustainability office or the sustainability team or the sustainability person is housed. If they are in the facilities department, then the priorities can be different. Although I think Art does a good job of weighing that it's not just important for facilities, but it's also important for students. And
absolutely. And we had a really great framework at Spelman because of just how it started, that seed that was planted years ago. And Sustainable Spelman, our campus-wide sustainability initiative, although I'm the first person to actually manage it, like that's my job. Right. It wasn't necessarily Art's job to manage that, because he's the director of facilities. So Art and Dr. Shafi, they probably were only able to dedicate, I don't know, 10% of their time to that because they have so many other things. But the beauty of this is that we as an institution laid the groundwork years ago with Dr. Tatum, and Art has been constantly moving us forward as an institution. So we have a really strong foundation. And a part of that was the development of the Sustainable Spelman Committee. So that's another recommendation that I would have for other institutions, if you do not already have a committee of people who are dedicated to sustainability on your campus, then create that. We have one, and it's existed for quite some time and is composed of people from across campus. We have people from the arts, people from the sciences, and then we also have alum who are a part of that as well. So it's a great way to just keep moving the needle forward. So that's another way. And try to make it fun, not just meetings, but like community building. Have lunch with your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Iesha, for all of this information. I just appreciate you and having a connection to you to ask those questions, as not only as an alumna, but also as somebody who just sees the importance of sustainability on campus and sees the importance of the environment and climate being important to our academic institutions and our institutions of higher learning.